Okay guys, another analysis video for you. I'm just going to get straight into it. So I've already said how I believe that the large iceberg type structure that Osama bin Laden is floating on is the USS Carl Vinson, and in support of that, it appears that these soldiers that he has on this iceberg have all these pointed heads which depict missiles. This appears to be happening on the 31st of January, which is the date of the lunar eclipse, the blood moon, the blue moon, the supermoon, the full moon. It's all about the moon. His hand motion, originally my first thought of that was he was depicting a tsunami wave coming over his head. But looking at it again, I'm also thinking it could be the depiction of missiles rising up. If all the smoke around the crescent moon here, or the lunar eclipse, is smoke from a missile strike, I was thinking, could that be related to the bloody nose strike, where we hear things like this?
President Trump's national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, is reportedly pushing for a military strike on North Korea that could have devastating consequences. Here's RT's Dan Cohen with more.
For months, National Security Advisor Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster has been advocating a so-called bloody nose strike on North Korea.
Are we looking at a preemptive strike? Are you trying to prepare us, you being collectively the administration and people like Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton, for a first strike at North Korea?
Well, what you're asking is are we preparing plans for a preventive war, right? A war that would prevent North Korea from threatening the United States with a nuclear weapon. And the president's been very clear about it. He said he's not going to tolerate it.
Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson reportedly are opposed to attacking North Korea.
So,
given the lack of intrinsic underlying...
So we hear news reports like that, and that appears to be linked to what I'm thinking is the USS Carl Vinson being involved in this bloody nose strike, and all this smoke rising up from the strike that they've just launched, possibly on the 31st during this lunar eclipse, or perhaps a short time after, but it looks like it's on the 31st. They've kind of made that look a bit clear in this video. And then I'm thinking about the news that came out yesterday about the missile, the fake alert that came out for Hawaii, saying that a ballistic missile was on its way. And as I said in the title of the video, is this a false alarm or a final warning? And I believe that it is a final warning, but not only that, it is a reason to do this bloody nose strike. After this alert, and after people found out it was a fake alert, a number of officials have come forward saying to Donald Trump that he must do something about North Korea. These people are being, they're just scared. They're scared that the fake alert that they got yesterday could actually be a real alert someday, and they're encouraging Donald Trump to basically strike first. And I believe that once enough people start saying that, Donald Trump will strike first, which leads me to this scene, particularly the F equals minus F, or as we know it, Newton's third law of motion, which means every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, which leads me on to the thinking that America is going to strike North Korea with this bloody nose strike. They're going to use the USS Carl Vinson and other military vessels to do so. That is going to have an equal and opposite reaction, but not immediately, as far as I can tell. Because then it leads on to this, where we have the Wu year, which was cleverly pointed out by J.K. Blackout. At the same time, we have the year of the dog, which is depicted right in the beginning of the video, and with the number 3 on his head and the number 3 in the ground. I'll get to that later. Not only that, but we have the yin yang, where it appears there's a switch from yin to yang. On Wikipedia, the term yang uses 3 words that I want to point out, which is positive, active, and male. I think we can all agree that for a number of years, we've depicted China as passive. They've got a large army, they've got good tech, but they don't really use it. Apart from around the South China Sea and stuff like that, they, you know, that's their kind of area. But globally, they're not a force that goes out of their country and goes out of their region and attacks other countries, per se. But now, we're moving from the yin, which is passive, to the yang, or the yang, which is active, which only strengthens this scene because it appears that these Chinese tanks, which I've mentioned, have clear similarities to the Tiananmen Square. These tanks are moving forward at the point where the yin is switching to yang, which is the year of the dog, the Wuzhu year of the dog. That led me on to thinking about what I've already talked about, which is the deer in heat, the hare on the wall, and the CALLA lily, all associated with February and March, but this is my video focusing on February specifically. We're also shown the LC, as we've come to call it, which I now believe is depicting not only the start of the lunar 12th month, but also the end of the lunar 12th month. But if we'll notice here, the light is not quite off of the lunar 12th month. This part of the L is still in the light, which leads me to think that when we look at the calendar, on February the 15th at midnight is when the yin-yang lunar 12th ends, year of the dog, Wuzhu year of the dog begins. It's pointing to that exact time frame between the 15th and the 16th. That is also in line with everything else I've spoken about so far, which is the stag, the hare, and the CALLA lily on the wall, not to mention the lily that blooms out of this apple here. Then we've got, so sorry, just to go back 1 second. So that's pointing us to the beginning of the lunar 12th and the end of the lunar 12th, which comes up to February the 15th, where we have 15 on the ground here, and the 3, which when we look at the calendar again, excuse me for the back and forth, the 3 on the 15th is represented by the 30, but the 0 has no value, so we take that away and we're left with 3 and 15, which is exactly what we're interpreting, I'm interpreting the C as, saying 3 and 15. So last lunar day, or last lunar 12th month, 3/15, exact same day. Then we have the 2 seeds and the 1 seed, which is 21. I believe that's correct, but I believe the 21 is represented as February, the 2nd month, and 1, the 1st lunar month. And when we look at the calendar again, just to go back very quickly, that is on the 16th of February. This is the day I think that the tsunami is going to come. Basically, between the 15th and the 16th, sometime between then, I think that the tsunami is going to come in retaliation for the bloody nose strike that appears to be depicted on or around the 31st of January. As I mentioned, the lunar eclipse, blood moon, blue moon, supermoon, full moon, all of that. Moving on, well, not really moving on, but just kind of taking another sidestep along this timeline, we've then got 22nd depicted in the V, where Obama appears to be sweating, appears to allude to nervousness, fear, something like that. Perhaps the tsunami that comes on the 21st is accompanied by an EMP, or the tsunami itself knocks out the electricity, something like that. And then on the 23rd, we're shown the 23rd, or the lunar 3, which, excuse me, both correspond to the same date in this particular interpretation. If you're thinking as the 2 from 23 as February, and the 3 as the 3rd lunar day, that would also be the lunar third. This is the day I think North Korea or China, but it seems to be North Korea if the video is pointing to the Juche bird, which appears to be linked to the 23rd or February and the third lunar day. This is also the day of the sun in North Korea, as I've mentioned, which is the birth of Kim Jong-un's father or grandfather, I can't remember which one. But it appears that in retaliation for the bloody nose strike that seems to take place on the 31st, we're then led into the Wuzhu New Year at the switch of the yin-yang, when China turns from passive to active. There seems to be a launch, what appears to be a launch, of a bird, and the only missile that I've heard about in the news in the last couple of months is the Juche bird, the dreaded Juche bird. Everyone's worried about the Juche bird, the largest missile, the largest nuclear missile North Korea has, and apparently stronger than the H-bomb that China tested. And who knows how big that will be and how much it will affect. I have no particular idea, but what I do know is that the 2 and the 3 correspond to February the 18th. And this would be after the Wuzhu year started, when I think that the tsunami type event happens. And then comes the Juche bird. It could be that there's an EMP, then a tsunami, then the Juche bird. If it's in that order, that's the most terrible order to have it in, because the EMP would knock out the electronics and sensitive circuits, which means there'd be no alerts, no news reports that you could get on wide scale about an incoming tsunami. And that would cause a lot of deaths because people wouldn't know it's coming. Basically, it would just be there. People wouldn't have had time to try and move inland, nothing like that. And then after that, when there's no electricity and the communications are probably poor, military will probably still have some form of communication. There'll still be probably shortwave radio, which is why they did their EMP test drill back in 2017, testing out the radio operators and seeing how it would work in the event of an EMP. Then this Juche bird comes when either the east coast or the west coast is flooded by a tsunami, the electricity is out, and then a nuclear detonation comes. Those 3 things in that order is the worst way it could happen, and it appears that that is their plan, or that is what they want to do. It's a lot to take in. When I'm making this video, I have that nervous butterfly feeling in my stomach. This is all so surreal. You just hope it's not real, and that it's just some sick fantasy idea that some editor and creators out there have put together. But then when you start breaking down the amount of detail in the video, you start to think that this is their plan. They constitutes a number of people and organizations, but they are working together as one, and they seem to be on a path to achieving this particular timeline. And that leads me on to the Be Ready video, because one thing I want to point out basically 3 things, and you just have to bear with me because I've got to play pause to show you exactly what I want to show you. Keep an eye up in this section here and this section here. So notice when this section appears, it appears at the same time as these symbols that we see here, and the time is 16. And if the interpretation from the iPad Goat video is correct and can be linked to the Be Ready video, then that seems to indicate the first lunar month. Again, that time frame between the 15th and the 16th. The switch of the yin yang, the Wuzhu year of the dog, the Chinese New Year, the day after the partial solar eclipse, which occurs on the 15th. And the 15th is the day of the sun in North Korea. And then the 18th is, sorry, the 15th is the shining star in North Korea. And then the 18th is the day of the sun in North Korea. So if the Be Ready video is pointing to the 16, as it pops up as the first number on that side, along with the symbols, I believe that it could be pointing to the first lunar month. I have more confirmation to back that particular, what's the word? Lost the word. Interpretation, that's it. To back that particular interpretation up. So 16, then we see all these symbols. Just keep that in mind for a second, because I want to show you something else. When we have this image here, the image is blurred. But later on in the scene, at this particular point, I'm just going to play it for a second. This is the blurred scene coming up here. When it gets a bit closer, it's much clearer, and we can see, sort of see, what's on it. So when it gets up to, when this particular picture comes in view, this is the blurred image that was from earlier. You can see how it's bright white up here and bright white down here. That corresponds to the same bright white upper layer and lower layer we see earlier in the video. He's got his hand clenched and he kind of stops here in front of this particular part. But over here is, when he clenches his hand, is when this picture actually comes into some form of view where you can see it, and I'll just make it bigger. So the actual image is of a ship on what looks like a lake or a sea or an ocean. I can't really tell exactly. It looks like there's some form of structure in the background here and some form of structure in the background here. Now these could be cliffs, and this is the boat sitting on the water. I don't know what that is. In my mind, I'm thinking it's a tsunami or a depiction of a tsunami. And the reason they don't show it clearly is because they have no images of a tsunami of a ship. They could probably, you know, create one. But if they just made the image a little bit less focused, it could look like a tsunami wave in the background coming towards this ship. And you can see this darker part here is a large shadow. And this whiter part here is, I believe, the sun reflecting off the water. But one thing I'm certain about, even if that's not a tsunami and it's more cliffs in the background, I am definitely sure that this is the blurred image, and one of the things I can make out in the image now is a ship on water. That's all I can really say. And if this video is related to water, the Aquarius sign is, this kind of seems to be the part where they're telling the people to run away. And that leads me on to the last conclusion of this video, is basically right at the end. These symbols here. One, if that, and this is just in my interpretation, so I don't know if it's correct, but I'm just linking it to the iPad GOAT interpretation. If this 1 o'clock on the clock actually stands for 1 lunar, which it possibly could, then that would be pointing us to the same time period, the 16th, which, as I said in the beginning of that interpretation, the first time that comes up on that side of the symbols is the number 16. And then we're shown the number 1 on the clock. 16 and 1 brings us to February the 16th. That time period of the switch from yin to yang, from Wuzhu to Year of the Dog, or Wuzhu Year of the Dog altogether. The Chinese New Year after the potential bloody nose strike that seems to be garnering support because of the fake alert that was sent out about a missile heading towards Hawaii, which was done on purpose. There's no way that was done on accident or done by accident. That was done on purpose, and the intention is to scare people into supporting a bloody no strike on North Korea, which I don't know what happens between the 31st and the 31st of January and the 15th of February, 15/16th of February, because it appears that, from what I can see, the response from North Korea and China doesn't come until the new year. And I don't know what happens in the middle of that. Maybe that's when, you know, they fully get their army ready to go on a full-on offensive. And then we get all these things like EMPs and submarines and stuff like that, and all of that's involved. Just one more thing with this Be Ready video. So that was just the one interpretation of the clock. And then obviously we've got the yin yang, which appears to be at that same level, just about to switch from yin to yang, from passive to active. And then we've got the sign of Aquarius, which is also the water bearer. And the sign of Aquarius is from January the 20th to February the 18th. The 18th being the third lunar day, and it's the last day of Aquarius. There's too many links here. There's too many things connecting, and honestly, it worries me. But the next part is obviously the globe, the Earth, but only North and South America are depicted. And then we have the plug, unplugged. So if we take that all as one sentence, I would say on the first lunar day, at the yin yang, in the sign of Aquarius, North and South America, or America as one, unplugged. And then be ready. So that's my interpretation, guys. I realize there's been a lot of dates thrown out, but we're just trying to pin it down. And I think we've done a solid job on doing that. And I really appreciate that you guys that have stuck with me and stuck with JK and stuck with other YouTubers as well while we tried to figure this out. It's been a long, hard road, and I don't think it's quite over yet, because there will be events happening after what I believe to be the third lunar day, which is the 18th of February, with things kicking off on 15/16 with the Tsunami event, and that all follows the bloody nose strike, which seems to be gaining popularity and support, particularly after this news about the missile heading to Hawaii, which was fake but done purposely in order to do that. So I don't think there's anything else I want to cover in this video. Again, I just want to express my appreciation for you guys sticking with us. Every single YouTuber out there who has worked on these videos, iPet Goat, Simpsons, Be Ready, looking at the Economist magazine and the Illuminati card game, and taking messages out of the Time magazine and the Golden Globe Awards with the Time's Up. My sincere appreciation, and let's pray that this is wrong, but at the same time, let's be aware that this could potentially happen, and it's on no level whatsoever a joke. This stuff is to be taken absolutely seriously, but don't fear. That's the one thing I don't want my videos to cause, is fear and then you know, undue anticipation. At the end of the day, when it comes down to it, I'm a Christian. I try my best to follow the Bible and follow the Word of God, and I pray that I've done enough to be seen as worthy when my time comes. But until then, I will not live in fear, despite the events that appear to be unfolding before us, because I've got God on my side. And when he's standing with me, who can be against me? And that's the same thing you guys should be saying. With that, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and God bless.